Jon Rosenthal, thank you for joining us on Inside Texas Politics. Nice to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for taking the drive up from Houston. So you're running for Railroad Commissioner, and I think, you represent parts of Houston, Cypress, some of the suburbs there. So you'll be familiar, and a familiar name to those in Houston, but for the rest of the state who may be being introduced to you for the first time, who are you and why you, why now?
What a great question, and thanks for this perfect opening. So I am Jon Rosenthal. I'm the state rep for District 135, which is Northwest Houston. I'm a career mechanical engineer. I worked in the oil field industry for over 25 years. And Northwest Harris County has a lot of oil field industry in the area that I represent, also the Cypher Independent School District. People don't usually know about the Railroad Commission. It's the most important agency that people have never heard of because it has nothing to do with trains. The Railroad Commission of Texas regulates oil and gas operations in the state. Mm-hmm. So it's massively important to our energy infrastructure, to our economy, and it kind of flies under the radar. So a career engineer who's now had 4 terms in the Texas House, this was the time.
Speaking of this being a race that maybe we'll call at one time a sleepy race, a race that maybe others weren't paying a whole lot of attention to. For better or worse, this is a race that is now making headlines. What made you decide now was the time for you after 4 terms in the House?
So what it really was, the motivation for me for this started after Winter Storm Uri. In 2021, when our state lost power, people froze to death in their own homes. People perished in their cars trying to stay warm or charge their cell phones. And we came back into the legislature and they largely refused to act on the core issues for the problem, which was natural gas delivery. We make more electricity from natural gas in this state than any other form. And so it was at that time, that's when the seed was planted for me. I wanted to come back and do something about that. And this is me coming back to fix our energy grid.
Yeah, I was doing a little reading on your background. You started as a plumber's apprentice,
Yeah.
Worked your way up into the mechanical engineer you are now the state representative. And I think some may argue that, respectfully, a state representative is different than running a large energy industry here in Texas. Texans feel very deeply about their energy and oil. What is your argument for that?
So before I ever got into politics, the career part of the engineering, I ran large scale projects. I'm talking about billion-dollar subsea development projects. So I'm intimate with the technology. I'm also intimate with leading large teams, vast groups, engaged in massive undertakings. And I'm a technical expert on the industry itself. I've worked on drilling rigs and production platforms. I did work on pipelines and even in chemical processing plants. So I know the industry from the inside out. And now with a little bit of government experience, I think that uniquely qualifies me for this job.
Texas depends heavily on oil and gas. You don't need me to tell you any of this, but environmental advocates often want stricter oversight, which is something many Texans would probably push against. What would be your argument for that? Where do you stand on regulations when it comes to our oil and gas?
Excellent question. So I actually firmly believe our industry, the oil and gas industry of Texas, can be profitable and relevant and lead the country in energy production while being responsible to communities, neighborhoods, and the environment. And my position is we should enforce the regulations that we already have. Railroad commissioners don't get to make new laws. That's for the legislature. But the stuff that we have in place now in Texas, we should enforce the laws that we already have on the books.
So you are okay with what is already currently in place? Would you change anything?
There are things I would suggest. Let's start out by just enforcing the laws that we already have. And then in order to get anything done, there's going to have to be some consensus built. So there are 2 other commissioners. It's a 3-person panel. The agency has 1,000 employees and a $500 million budget. So there's consensus to be built. I'll work with the other commissioners and the legislature on stuff that I think we should all be able to agree on.
Where do you specifically draw the line with our current regulations, if anywhere?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You mentioned there were a couple things you might suggest changing.
Oh.
Where do you draw the line?
So we already have rules in place about routine flaring, which is when you burn excess natural gas, either on a drilling rig or a production platform or facility. I do think we should be having stronger efforts to reduce that, capture the gas. It's an energy source. You know, we burn $1.9 billion worth of natural gas into the air in Texas every year. It would be enough to provide natural gas for free to every household in the state that uses it. So it seems like we should be able to capture that, sell it, use the money from that to pay for the infrastructure.
Republicans will likely paint you as someone quite aggressive in regulatory efforts in this industry. What do you say to that?
So 4 elections now, and sometimes my opponents have tried to say that I'm a Democrat that wants to destroy the oil and gas industry. My answer to that is, it's literally how I make my house payments. I'm not looking to cut the legs out from my own household. And plus, it's 30% of the state's economy. And plus, the revenue from oil and gas pays for our schools, our universities, our parks and wildlife. It's a vital part of the Texas economy and the Texas culture. I'm all in to make sure that we're strong, profitable, and responsible.
Let's stay on the subject of your opponents and how you may be painted. You are running against the Republican Beau French. He has generated headlines as of recent over comments he's made on social media. I have some of them written down. I don't want to misquote. He's made some of these comments on the campaign trail and again online, including from top Republicans after posting a social media poll asking whether Jews or Muslims were a bigger threat to America. Do you believe a candidate's judgment or temperament on the campaign trail is a relevant problem to this race specifically?
In most cases, I would say no. In this case, having that kind of temperament where he's proud of being a racist, apparently has acknowledged this online. He's boldly against Muslims and Jews and actually anybody that doesn't look like him. Our oil and gas industry in this state is vastly diverse, and we do business with countries all over the planet. I personally have done jobs for Saudi Aramco, Egyptian Drilling, and the like. We do billions of dollars of commerce. I think it's important that we keep our business relationships alive and thriving. And in an environment like Texas, I think our oil and gas operators would prefer to have stability and sensible governance rather than chaos and culture wars.
You know, there will be voters who may or may not agree with him and overall may not care about the controversy if he is promising to fight for them. So why should the comments overall matter when choosing a railroad commissioner?
And again, in my personal opinion, they shouldn't matter. It's just this guy's so extreme that kind of temperament just is not a fit for management and oversight of our largest piece of the Texas economy. Also, he has no operational experience that I'm aware of. He has limited engagement with the industry overall. His family owns an oil company. He does not know the ins and outs of this business. So I'll be working with all of our stakeholders in and around this business, both from the environmental side and the industrial and the energy majors. And let's see if we can't build a consensus for sensible governance over culture wars.
I think this is a good pivot. You know, if voters were to put you and Mr. French side by side, what would you say is the biggest difference in what your current campaign talks are right now, what you are currently pitching to voters?
It's very good. So if people go to my website, jonrosenthaltx.com, you'll see a whole platform full of substantial, well thought out policy positions. I have no idea what he's forwarding. All I've heard is he thinks we have too much regulation already. I think we should enforce the regulations we have, strengthen our relationships both at home and abroad, keep Texas the energy leader that it already is.
Sure. Is there anything you and your opponent may potentially agree on?
There is.
Okay, let's hear it.
So I do believe we both agree that the commission should be renamed. It's not the Railroad Commission because it has nothing to do with railroads. How about we call it the Texas Oil and Gas Commission?
I think that's fair enough. Sure. Anything else you think policy-wise when it comes to this position? that you and Mr. French may agree on?
I haven't heard much policy from him, so I don't know.
Fair enough. I also would like to ask, for better or worse, Mr. French is generating a lot of press. What is your strategy when it comes to name recognition? Sometimes some may argue that is the name of the game when it comes to a campaign. Down ballot voters exist.
It's true. And one of the big uphill battles running for railroad commissioner is for people to understand this is about your energy infrastructure. It's about keeping the lights on in the next winter storm. It's about lowering your electric bills. And so to elevate awareness for that purpose, it's probably good. The controversy that he stirs up, I find distasteful, if not abhorrent. But if it raises awareness to the position and what's at stake here, it's probably good for the race.
You're headed to a couple of campaign stops here after your stop with Inside Texas Politics. What have folks been talking to you about their biggest concerns when it comes to subject matters of this position?
The biggest things that people talk to me about every day, and I am on the campaign trail every day, are our energy infrastructure, so making sure the lights stay on, our electric bills are too high, and we're still paying off a debt from that winter storm. And then the third, here's what's surprising. Republicans in rural areas talk to me about pollution and the environment. They're very concerned about pollution, especially in the Permian Basin, West Texas.
What is that stat you mentioned earlier about how much is being burned into our air?
Yeah, the flaring, but they're worried about the saltwater disposal. So water is produced when we bring oil and gas out of the ground. It's very toxic, very noxious, and you have to do something with it. It gets disposed of down in active wells. And then, after being stored there for many years, sometimes it erupts up. Just a few weeks ago, the only church in Grand Falls, Texas, right outside of Midland, Odessa, First Baptist Church, was basically flooded with noxious, oily, chemical water.
What happens when you get exposed to that?
Well, it can cause a number of issues. If there's sulfur in the water, hydrogen sulfide gas can cause headaches or respiratory problems, even death. It's just the same as any toxic chemical exposure. You just need to keep it off of you and outside of your body to stay safe.
Who do you think is going to be the hardest voter to crack? You are asking, you don't need me to tell you, it's been 30 years since a Democrat has held a statewide office. You are asking voters to change their course.
It's true.
Who do you think the toughest voter is going to be to crack?
I think the people I need to talk to are the energy workers and the agriculture and livestock workers. People who either own those businesses or work in those industries. Those are the ones directly affected, who will be aware of this and knowledgeable of the race. And so I'm going to focus my time on rural adjacent, and even Republicans. Remember, when I won in 2018, I flipped a district that was a deep red seat. Nobody thought it was winnable. And to do that, quite a number of moderate Republicans and a number of independents had to vote for me. Those will be the people I intend to talk to.
So is there a similar strategy here that you are following?
Absolutely.
Okay. Representative, I always end interviews with an open floor mic situation, a little different than how Mr. Whiteley sometimes conducts, but I do want to leave the floor open to you if there's anything that you'd like to talk about that maybe I didn't touch on.
I would just stress that this is the position that's the economic backbone of the country, Texas oil and gas industry. It's also responsible for making sure our energy infrastructure is more resilient and reliable. So if you froze during Winter Storm Uri and you want to fix those problems, if you feel like your electric bills are too high, I'm the guy to address those things. I'm the expert in this race. My opponent has no experience.
Representative Rosenthal, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.